Welcome to the podcast. We're glad you're here. Please note the following before we get started. Unauthorized copying, distribution, or use of this podcast or its materials is prohibited. The opinions expressed by hosts and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect those of study groups. This podcast is for informational purposes only and does not constitute investment, trading, or legal advice. Always consult a qualified professional before making financial decisions.
Hello, I'm Jed Brewer with Study Groups, and welcome to our podcast. Today we're going to be talking about fuel pricing and operations in a volatile market, and I'm really excited to be able to put this podcast together. SG Voices Talks is a short-form, fast-moving conversation designed for real-world insights. And I'm excited also to introduce our two guests to talk about fuel pricing and operations. First, we have David Thompson. He's Vice President of POWERHOUSE, and they're a hedging, risk management, market fundamentals consulting firm. David, thank you for being on our show today.
Glad to be here with you.
Yeah, and second, we have Johnny Bertucci, President of RowLogic. They're a pricing automation, data integration, and real-time execution software company. Johnny, it's really nice to have you as well.
Looking forward to being here.
So, gentlemen, we'll get right in. Fuel markets, they're more unpredictable, it feels like, than ever. And today we're going to break down what volatility really means and how wholesale commercial fuel marketers can respond with strategy and systems that actually work. So, thinking just a little bit about this volatile market that we're in, why is fuel pricing harder than ever? Why does it feel that way? It's always been volatile, but David, the last few years, they really seem like it's been something else. And so from your vantage point as an industry expert, what do you feel has fundamentally changed?
Well, the biggest thing, and we're going to talk about it in several iterations through the conversation today, is this idea of the rate of change. And that applies in a couple of different areas. First of all, the rate of price change. We've seen, as you point out, yes, prices in fuel and energy always move, but the scale at which they are moving has really ramped up. And we see that in measures of volatility, in absolute cents per gallon change. Things that used to take weeks, days, even hours for price to move now can move in the span of 10 or 15 seconds. And a lot of this is driven by information and how quickly information is being transmitted through to market participants. So there's been, political disruptions, economic disruptions, all of these things happen, but now people are across the spectrum, across the market, receiving this information and being able to act upon it at a much faster rate. So these things are acting to drive the rate of change faster and create more volatility in the pricing.
So when you say information, it moves faster than ever. Internet, TikTok, social media,
Exactly.
et cetera, all feeding into that.
Exactly. I mean, before you had the Wall Street Journal, you had, different price transfer, information services that would publish information once a day. Now we can get it on our phone anytime we hit refresh. And people are seeing real time just about everywhere and in every application. So that's quickly, allowed people to take advantage of that in good ways and to act upon it, but it's also just sped up the decision-making process.
Thank you, David. Yeah, Johnny, from your perspective, fuel markets volatile, right? What has changed? What has fundamentally changed that's driving this?
Yeah, I think the one of the biggest changes is the frequency at which marketers have their pricing changed. So whereas on a normal flow, your price would change once a day. Maybe the marketer's price from the supplier would change twice a day when things were going crazy. Now they're changing 3, 4, 5 times a day, especially because of what's going on in Iran. And so now, when you're in a situation where, once a day, you know your price and you can go about your day. Now it's like, no, that's 3 or 4 times a day. You need to start figuring things out. And to piggyback what David's saying, just the move itself where, I remember many, many, many moons ago, I wrote a script that would alert when prices changed 2 cents. Now it's like if nobody even bats an eye at 2 cents. The scale at which prices are changing now, especially in these last few months of 10, 20 cents is vastly different than what people are used to.
Mm-hmm. It definitely feels that way. And how are marketers managing this volatility on the ground at the rack and margins and inventory risk? David, I'll start with you.
A lot of this has changed, and we're speaking now in the context of the situation in the Persian Gulf. But remember, we also recently have lived through the start of the Ukraine-Russia war, and 2 years before that, COVID. So we've had, three just seismic level events hit the energy markets. And so a lot of this has led, and many customers that we work with have learned that I just can't ride through this volatility anymore. If you own physical barrels and physical gallons and you haven't sold them to a customer, the idea that you can just manage to go through a couple of days and it'll all settle out, that's just not the case anymore, where you have very common to see intraday price changes from the low to the high. Just the other day, we had one that was 39 cents a gallon on diesel fuel in one day, from the low print to the high print of the day. Change on the day from one day to the next, 10 cents common, 8 cents common, and that will just eat through a profit margin. So what we've seen is a lot of customers just said, I have to find a way to try and smooth that out and take out some of that price volatility, and that's where hedging comes in.
Oh, very fair point. And Johnny, anything to add on that topic of what's going on at the rack and margins, inventory risk the marketers are doing proactively?
Right. Yeah. From the standpoint of, marketers like on the ground, what's going on is, the ability to not only get your own price, but to notify your customer of their price. And when you've got maybe a manual or a small system doing that once a day, now all of a sudden having to monitor that and do that multiple times a day, for those that are not able to do so, that's a challenge, a huge challenge.
Oh, definitely, definitely. And that, I guess, leads us a little bit into more of this volatility conversation that we're having. And David, I'm just curious from your vantage point with the risk and hedging opportunities that may be there. With volatility being this new feature, not just a bug, it's kind of here to stay, or at least for now. What does this mean for marketers? What can we do?
Well, we've always emphasized to our clients that if you can manage price risk volatility, it can become an advantage for you against competitors who can't. If you can go out and market fixed price ideas or capped pricing schemes to your customers that can protect them against prices moving higher, but allow them to benefit if there's a big drop in price. These are very powerful marketing tools. And as opposed to just being at the whim of what the market throws at you, you can come to your customers and offer them different ways to solve their problems. And that really helps transform a marketing company, energy marketing company, simply from the person they buy their fuel from to being a company that helps solve their problem. And so that's really something I think is critical for the listeners to understand, is that yes, volatility is here, and it's always been here. The scale has increased a lot in the last three big episodes we've talked about, but this is an opportunity because the end users, the buyers of fuel that you sell to, they're just as terrified as you are when looking at the price of these moves. If you buy fuel for a transportation company, you don't want to be the one who has to go in and explain to your boss why you bought at the top of the market. But if your fuel supplier, your marketing supplier can come in and help you with the pricing program that allows you to benefit in case prices do drop, you're solving a very important issue for customers, and that wins business, that opens doors, that sets you apart from your competition.
100%. And it's a good point that you make about volatility leading to opportunity. With change comes opportunity to be able to take advantage of it. And a question that came in from the audience when we were preparing for this call, you're a hedging company. One of the challenges is somebody tries to implement a hedge is you're often buying a hedge off of the NYMEX, the New York Mercantile Exchange, but the actual price you incur is a local price, and you got that basis risk in between. So their question was like, POWERHOUSE, your company, David, do you offer Group 3 ultra low sulfur diesel basis swaps? in addition to just NYMEX heating oil futures?
There's a liquid and growing market in the Group 3 basis contracts that you can pair together with the underlying diesel futures contracts. It's a differential, if you will. That's growing in interest a lot. We expect to see there's a very liquid one also in the Gulf Coast for Gulf Coast marketers. Not so much in the West Coast. That's still a developing market. But when you look at some of the price changes we've seen in both Group and Chicago area, Chicago recently had all 4 or 5 major refineries that service that sort of Chicagoland area, all having problems at the same time. Basis in Chicago went from 85 cents under to $1 over in the matter of a week. So that's what spurs development and market adoption of these basis contracts. The Group has always been, the one of the most geographically removed from a lot of the refining centers, and so that spurred that need for a basis contract. It's small, but it is liquid, and we can transact in it. So the answer is yes. We do look at a lot of solutions for basis for Group 3, Gulf Coast, and even some East Coast basis when the need arises.
That's good news that we're starting to get better options to be able to go out and procure our actual price. Yeah. And kind of related, you mentioned hedging, which some of these contracts are hedging tools, and you emphasize the importance of it. What are common misconceptions that marketers have about hedging?
I think one of the biggest ones we run into is that implementing a hedging program is going to change the way you physically procure your fuel. It won't. You're still going to buy from the same supplier you do. You're still going to have the same relationships you do. You're still going to run your trucks to the same terminals as you do. You're just adding an overlay, a protective overlay to try and deal with the volatility. So hedging doesn't change any of the existing physical operations you have. It's simply going to give you additional flexibility in how you run your business.
Take me a little bit deeper into that. I like what you're saying. It's not going to change the operations of my business. So what does a disciplined hedging program actually look like?
It's very important when you're hedging to start, and exactly the word you use, discipline is key. You want to hedge on a regular and routine basis. We're not trying to time the market. Hedging is the opposite of speculating. We're trying to establish a regular program that when you acquire fuel that you haven't yet sold, or you make a price promise to a customer and you don't yet have the fuel, those are the standard typical reasons why you hedge. You're trying to protect your profit margin and grow your business. So you're looking to do this regularly. When you take on risk, due to how you're buying your physical, you want to try and lay it off with the financial instruments through hedging as soon as those risks occur. For instance, if you're shipping on a pipeline, you're going to be shipping and you're going to be receiving fuel in, call it 10 to 15 days. You can't sell that fuel for that period of time. So that you're at risk of price falling between the time you contract with your physical supplier, the refiner, put that product into the pipeline before you can get it. You need to protect yourself along the way and not speculate that I hope prices are higher when the time the fuel gets here. That would be pure speculation. We're saying establish a regular program where when you acquire risk, you hedge it.
Regular program, disciplined, key points of implementing an effective hedging program. Storage can be a big opportunity as well. I'm thinking of over in Iran right now, like they're running out of storage, right? But how should storage play in to help you properly optimize your physical supply with your hedging strategy? How much storage should you have?
Well, the standard futures contract is for 42,000 gallons, and each contract covers 1 month's time period. We do specialized gallon amounts in over-the-counter transactions. We can do those transactions as well, depending on the needs of the customers. But most customers are looking at, a volume of 42,000 gallons on a monthly basis. If you have that, then you certainly have the ability to use all the tools available to you. In terms of you phrased it in a very unique way, and I think an important way of understanding that if you typically just buy supply at the rack, put your price on it, mark it up, and sell it to your customer, that's a perfectly legitimate business. And many people have started that way and grow that way, and that's still an important part of their business. But when you can take supply and store it in your tank, in the tank of a supplier, perhaps through an in-tank transfer arrangement, you're now creating your own pool of supply. Because you have inventory, you're managing the hedge on it, you're protecting it against up and down fluctuations from the time you buy it to the time you sell it. But you now have an independent source of supply. You may still go and buy at the rack, you may still make other deals as you wish, but you have your own independent source that you can take advantage of if it turns out to be at a good price for the market. So that's really what storage is, a very, very useful thing for a marketer to have. It opens up a whole another realm of pricing and gives them a great deal of flexibility.
Storage is one of those other options it sounds like that one can play and utilize to your advantage, take opportunity and volatility. Transitioning a little bit, Johnny, I want to move to you, talking about pricing, execution, and technology. And I know one of the things that you're a big champion of is automation and data flow and real-time tools. Spreadsheets, old time. Why do spreadsheets often break down in volatile markets like what we're in today?
The biggest reason is because if you're using spreadsheets, chances are you're manually entering data into those spreadsheets, or even if you're getting the data to be pulled in automatically some kind of a way, you're still looking at it manually. It's day to day. And again, sort of the topic here is the volatility. If prices are changing once a day, maybe not that big a deal, but when they're changing multiple times a day, now what are you doing? Are you going back to that spreadsheet multiple times a day, changing more prices? How many prices are you changing? How are you looking, getting these prices to your customer? Just one, if you're doing things by a spreadsheet, even if the spreadsheet is somewhat automated, chances are your hands are too much in it to be able to go fast.
Mm-hmm. And making decisions by committee when things are changing that quick can be challenging as well. And it kind of takes us to getting the prices out to our customers, which a lot of us have to do, and some of us even struggle with. And what does getting the right price out quickly actually mean today?
Right. And again, when prices are coming in once a day for a supplier to a marketer, that marketer, once a day, usually in the evening, is sending out to his customers a price with some markup, taxes, freight, whatever might be on it for their customer. And then, normal, things go just fine. If prices are changing 2, 3, 4 times a day, well, you need to notify your customer of that price change as well, unless you're going to not pass on that price change to your customer, which you're typically not going to do. And so you need to notify them. And if that system is not automated, it's almost impossible to keep up with it. If you have a few customers and a few suppliers, maybe, but if you have more than just a few, that's going to be a full-time person's task to do nothing but monitor and send, if you will.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. So, volatile prices leads to opportunity, but also opportunity to mess up or lose margin, not capture things as well. And when you're working with marketers in volatile environments like we are, right, and you're very manually processed, where do you see the most margin loss? Where do things break down?
Right. So if the market's moving, and if you're slow to get that notification out to your customer or miss it altogether, then your customer's sitting at one price, and you're lifting at the rack at another price. Your customer is going to expect his bill to be for the price you quoted him. And again, if you're slow or missing things, and it'll work both ways. If the price is going up or the price is going down, you really need to be in sync. And marketers, the supplier sending these, my terminology was midday pricing. I think we call them intraday pricing. I had a client tell me the other day, they refer to it as off-schedule pricing, which I think is a good term. Off-schedule pricing, is that, that when they, the supplier sends it an hour and a half before it takes effect. So you don't have, an hours in order to notify your customer. So 10 o'clock in the morning, you get notified that at 11 o'clock in the morning, your price is changing. You got to let that customer know fairly quickly that that price has changed. If that makes sense.
Yeah, so speed of updating prices is very important in volatile markets. Using technology to help you do it as opposed to spreadsheets is important. Are there other areas that automation can help your pricing team better do their job?
Right. I think typically depending on your pricing philosophy, if you will, sometimes the philosophy is just it's going to be so many cents over a rack. That's much easier to automate. The price comes in, price goes out. Nobody's really looking at it hard in that sense because you've got your rule in place. But there's also where, if the market's real volatile, if you have the ability to quickly and easily, like in one fell swoop, I want to change these margins because of this market and send those prices out, like because I have a system that's automated and can do it on the fly, boy, I can make a ton of money, or I can miss out on a ton of money because you know what I'm saying? Like if you can make that change, I'm sending prices out to 100 customers, the market's, going crazy. Well, if I can play that game, I can make a ton of margin. But if I don't play the game, then I'm just stuck with hoping I get my prices out to my customer, matching up to the source of the supply I'm pulling from the terminal, getting those prices to be the same, if the cost to be the same match. And then you're just doing normal sell and buy.
One last question on
that's
this
one thing
topic,
that
Johnny. What's the
actually,
best?
I would say
Oh,
that's
go ahead,
one thing
David.
that links in with what Johnny's saying is those big moves in price. It's very key for your hedging program as well to understand if your price happens to be good in the market, let's
Right.
say, and the market's really moving higher, and you start to move gallons very quickly. You need to be able to get that information and adjust your hedges appropriately. You may choose to lift some more hedges and bring more product available at your terminal, at your racks. But as Johnny was saying, getting that information flow back and forth and sort of knowing what you have and being able to change quickly to take advantage of the situation and adjust from where we would work with our customers on adjusting your hedge program to reflect that. And take advantage of the ability to move more gallons in advantageous markets to you is absolutely critical. The worst thing in the world is to say, hey, we moved all these gallons, but we didn't get our hedge taken off in time. And so we suffered on the hedge, even though we did great on the physical business. We want to try and always time those as perfectly as you can to when we always say, when you acquire a product, I say it's like you just bought yourself a Rembrandt painting and you put it in the back of your pickup truck. Your first call should be to buy insurance on it and buy protection on it. And secondly, once you sell the product and you no longer have the risk, well, now you don't need the hedge anymore. The hedge actually becomes speculative at that point. We don't want that either. So, taking advantage of a great market to move the gallons, wonderful. But you need to quickly understand that has to be communicated to your hedging program to adjust your hedge in the appropriate manner as well.
That's a great point, David. And Johnny, it looked like you were itching to jump in there with a comment as well.
No, but just that, right. It's like if the volatility, while I guess a bad thing could be a good thing, right? It's like, and kind of what Dave was saying is like, if all the information is there, and I think because of the speed at which things are happening, in a sense, it's not like you think speed, like, well, it's an hour here, whatever, but you're not, but if the system is in place for the price to come in, the price to go out, and to David's point about having a hedge on those gallons, I guess, because you said it before, like, my pet peeve, I guess, whatever, is automation. You want that to happen automatically. You don't want somebody to have to be entering prices, somebody to have to be manually sending things, somebody to be, it's like let the system take care of that for you, and then you concentrate on actually lifting the fuel and getting it to the customer.
Mm-hmm. And I'm sure human error plays a factor into it too when you're manually doing stuff. And
Oh,
Johnny, I'm just
absolutely.
curious, if I'm somebody who is manually doing something, what's the best software available on the market today to implement these price movements?
Well, I mean, certainly we have an application, at RowLogic that will, if like a better word, suck prices in from any source and be able to send them back out. There's most ERPs now will do some sort of this, right? If you have a back office accounting system that's, unique to your petroleum marketing, your company, most of those will do this. Um, I'm trying to think of a word that's the opposite of robustly. They'll do it, right? They'll take the prices in and send it out. But if you want something that's a little bit more robust, to take prices in, be able to do some fancy calculations with it, some blending pricing and some high-low pricing, some average pricing, et cetera. There's a handful of applications out there that will do something like that.
Mm-hmm. And contact Johnny if you want to know more. Moving on just a little bit here, we were talking about hedging, we were talking about pricing and execution and trying to automate things, kind of marrying strategy and systems together. And really, David, when I look at you, you help people decide your strategy. And Johnny, when I look at you, you help people execute that strategy that they've chosen. And David, I'll turn to you and just ask you, where do you see the biggest disconnect today between strategy and execution?
Well, it's in the thing that's very critical is to understand your process for acquiring supply, physical gallons, and hedging them and understanding how you're selling them. And making sure that if you have a sales team that goes out there and knows that we can sell fixed price deals because we have the ability to hedge, that they're communicating those sales in as close to real-time manner back to the hedging and supply team as possible. So you're not losing anything there between, moving the physical gallons, which from the marketer's point of view is getting rid of risk, and having it be an overnight lag or a weekend lag between getting the hedge adjusted correctly, or finding out that some supply came in late in the day and you didn't hedge it in time. And then you had to go through a weekend with unhedged gallons. Those are things that you really want to try and avoid. And that requires just a good, determined policy beforehand, where you have supply, management, accounting, and sales all understanding what the procedure is going to be. It doesn't have to be a giant textbook in terms of a policy, but it has to be a very simple policy of understanding this is how we're going to have the capacity, the ability to price with these new tools of hedging, as opposed to simply buying at the rack, marking it up, and delivering it. We can do some different things, which, as we talked about a little bit earlier, are great and will open up more sales opportunities. But you want to make sure they're coordinated ahead of time and everybody has their lane that they know they can go in and the checkoffs they need to do before they present a price to the customer.
Alignment of the whole team and being on the same page, always important communication. Johnny, what about you? Do you see a big disconnect between strategy and execution?
I think the biggest thing that occurs to me is kind of thinking that you can stay on top of things manually. And so, like, even if you have a strategy of pricing and a strategy of communication, if you think you can do it manually, the day just moves too fast. And so, you really need to figure out a way to have all of this stuff not be done manually.
Mm-hmm. So thinking, Johnny, about a fully modernized pricing operation, having automation is a critical piece of that. Are there other pieces in addition to automation?
Certainly, the automation is what will get rid of your errors, right? Get rid of manual mistakes. The other thing I think is part of the automation is you're getting prices from suppliers a lot of times multiple different ways. most of them are through like a DTN clearinghouse, but sometimes you just have emails. Sometimes you have contracts like through Platts that are coming where you're calculating the prices. And so it's like if you're, trying to automate, all these things, it's like you really, I guess, need to take a holistic view. What can you do? What can you pull in? What can you send out? Prices going out, people want them by text, people want them by email, people want them, with an app. Anyway, just the ability to be able to get your customers their prices the way they want it, B, get your pricing from the supplier the way you need it. And that's kind of, so the automation is like sort of the black box in the middle, but there are these parts that have to be able to fit into that automation to make it work. I think that made sense.
Yeah, it does, Johnny. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And just kind of wrapping this up and moving into our closing takeaways, we want to really come away with practical, actionable things. And David, I'll ask you, what is one thing a marketer should do this month to improve pricing practices, both from margin perspective and from an operational standpoint?
Well, I think, the biggest thing is to, look at what you want to try and achieve. We hear it again and again from marketers. The number one thing they hear from customers is, how can I make my price lower? What can I do to achieve a better cost, to bring a better cost to market? And this comes into something that really sort of marries together what we've been talking about, sort of the idea of hedging and the idea of the technology that really works together. Many times you can go to a supplier and say, rather than just me bringing my trucks under the rack as I do every day, what if I took a larger amount of supply? And whether it lives in my tank or it lives in you, the supplier's tank, through an in-tank transfer type of a deal. As I said, this opens up a whole new source of supply. And this gives a marketer, from that new month when you're starting it, a whole new source of supply. And you're managing your hedge, coming back all the way to where we started with volatility. Let's say you have a big down day and you want to make, as Johnny was saying, an off-schedule price change, or what sometimes is known as a day deal in the market, where the market's down 15 cents a gallon, and you, the marketer, can go to customers and say, I can offer you an intraday price deal right now. So you don't have to wait until the end of the day where who knows where prices might end up. If you want to take advantage of this big drop in price, that can open up a huge new avenue of sales, and gives you something to compete with. We've heard that many times from marketers. They'll say, how is this guy coming up with these low prices? And we'll say, well, he's hedged and he's taking advantage of a big price drop. He's protected on this downdraft, and he's liquidating a hedge and bringing these gallons to his customers, offering them to his customers, on this intraday basis. And it can be a very nice deal to increase margins and give your customers what they want, that lower price where they don't have to wait and see if it stays low by the final closing price of the day. So that's something we're really bringing these things all together, and you're going to have to be able to communicate that in those pricing changes, where what Johnny brings to the table, that's all part of this as well. Again, it's difficult to just do it on a one-off basis. You need to have your systems all integrated for any things that's going to come up, new deliveries, making sure you have the transport in the right place to take advantage of these things. But it's a fantastic opportunity. It's something that, you can go as a marketer, talk to your supplier. There's not a large supplier in the world who doesn't want to have their marketing customer come up and say, how can I buy more fuel from you? They're always interested in that conversation. It can open up from the marketer's point of view. Starting this month, it can open up a lot of new things to look at. But you need to have your hedging tools and your systems tools in place to take care of this before you start that conversation with your supplier.
David, is there one thing somebody should stop doing?
I always say the biggest thing you should stop doing is stop hoping. Stop hoping it's going to settle down. Stop hoping the price is going to go in the direction that you wish. It's almost cliche to say it. Hope is not a strategy. It certainly isn't in our world. And with the price volatility that we've seen, it can be a very, very expensive strategy. Going into the things you should do, invest in knowledge and learning and your capacity and your skills, and stop hoping. You'll be better off for both those things.
No, that's a great point. Thank you, David. And Johnny, I'll give you the last word. what's one thing a marketer should do this month to improve pricing practices?
I think that there are like two sides of the coin. One is getting your prices from your supplier, and the other is sending prices to your customers. It'd be like pick one side, gathering prices or sending prices, and start the process of automating it. How are your prices coming in? Let's normalize them. Let's get them into a format that can easily be then organized such that we can send prices out. So start somewhere.
Start somewhere, yeah. And what's one thing that you should stop doing?
Certainly, if you're still doing spreadsheets, you've got to get a better way. You've got to get, there's I mean, I didn't make this up, but there's a saying like, if the only tool in your toolbox is a nail, everything looks like a hammer. If your only tool in your toolbox is an Excel spreadsheet, everything looks like, data that goes in a grid. So be thinking broader than spreadsheet.
Oh, that's good points. Thank you guys so much for your expertise that you shared here on the call today. Thank you for listening as well to our podcast. Be on the lookout for SG Voice's educational content, more to come, including on July 16th is our next webinar, The New Era of Fleet Management, AI-Powered Operations and Online Inventory Visibility. We're going to have Gravitate and Petro Exchange as our guest speakers. Look forward to seeing you there, and take care. Goodbye.
Thanks for tuning in. We would love your feedback. If you watched episode 1, please scan the QR code below to complete a brief anonymous survey. If you're listening, drop us a line to let us know what you thought. Email Hillary Rockwell at hrockwell@studygroups.com. This material has been prepared by a sales or trading employee or agent of Powerhouse Brokers LLC and is in the nature of a solicitation. This material is not a research report prepared by Powerhouse Brokers LLC. By accepting this communication, you agree that you are an experienced user of the futures markets, capable of making independent trading decisions, and agree that you are not, and will not, rely solely on this communication in making trading decisions. Distribution in some jurisdictions may be prohibited or restricted by law. Persons in possession of this communication indirectly should inform themselves about and observe any such prohibition or restrictions. To the extent that you have received this communication indirectly and solicitations are prohibited in your jurisdiction without registration, the market commentary in this communication should not be considered a solicitation. The risk of loss in trading futures and/or options is substantial, and each investor and/or trader must consider whether this is a suitable investment. Past performance, whether actual or indicated by simulated historical tests of strategies, is not indicative of future results. Trading advice is based on information taken from trades and statistical services and other sources that Powerhouse Brokers LLC believes are reliable. We do not guarantee that such information is accurate or complete, and it should not be relied upon as such. Trading advice reflects our good faith judgment at a specific time and is subject to change without notice. There is no guarantee that the advice we give will result in profitable trades.